Patents can cost tens of thousands of dollars over the life of the patent. Are they really worth the cost? Welcome to the Patent Bootcamp, the 4-part series that'll teach you everything you should know before getting a patent. I'll be going over patent cost data first and patent value data second, so please feel free to jump around to whatever part of the video is most helpful to you. For the patent cost data, we're going to be using the patent cost calculator from INRIpatentlaw.com. One thing to understand when trying to estimate the cost of a patent is that a lot of practitioners will quote you just the cost of drafting a patent application, when in truth, the entire process can be much more expensive and take a lot longer than just the drafting step. Over the entire life of the patent, you have to pay for it to be drafted, for the filing fees, for the office action responses, and for maintenance fees 11.5 years after the patent is granted. So a lot more goes into it than just the drafting costs, and I think it's important to be transparent about that on the front end. So what the patent cost calculator does is it allows you to enter your own needs and your own situation, and it estimates the cost of a patent if you used a firm like INRI Patent Law. For example, let's say that you need one non-provisional patent application, which, for the sake of simplicity, a non-provisional is the real patent application. A provisional is sort of a way to hold your place in line until you get a non-provisional. For the sake of this estimation, we'll just use one non-provisional application. This is just the cost of getting one patent. And let's say the complexity of the invention is medium. Because for patent practitioners, if you have a very complicated invention that's going to need a very long patent application, they're going to charge more for that. And on the other hand, if you have a simple invention that's going to need a much shorter patent application, then they'll typically charge you less. But for our purposes, we'll go with medium. Again, no provisional applications for this one. Now, your entity size determines how much the patent office is going to charge you in fees when you file things. So for the purposes of this estimate, let's say you are a small entity, meaning that you have less than 500 employees. Next, we're going to need to estimate how many office action responses will be filed. This is essentially how many steps of back and forth there will be between your attorney and the patent office. Now, the average here is about 1.37 office action responses, so we'll go with 1 because that's the nearest round number to 1.37. Now, for the additional claims, we'll go with 0, that's standard. And then lastly, Track 1 is a program that exists that lets you make the patent process go faster. So essentially, if you file Track 1, then your application will usually take around 4.4 months from initial filing to final disposition, though of course this varies by technology. Whereas if you don't file Track 1, the average is about 26.1 months from filing to final disposition, which we hope, of course, the final disposition is a patent grant. So a little over 2 years if you don't use it, and a little less than 5 months if you do use Track 1. For our purposes, we will not file Track 1, but we'll go back and do a higher estimate afterwards. So under this, you see your estimated total costs incurred are $20,696. Now, what you need to understand when you see this figure is this is not what you're paying immediately. What you're going to pay through the filing, so for drafting and then filing that application, is $10,832 roughly. What you're going to be paying through the grant of this application, which again, we're not filing Track 1, and we are assuming, of course, that this patent gets granted. So that's going to take about 26.1 months. You're looking more than 2 years down the road. You will have paid in total $15,312. After that, you have to start paying what are called maintenance fees, which are what the patent office charges you to keep the patent alive. You get those first 3.5 years just based off of what you've paid already. Then you pay your first maintenance fees, and now you will have paid $16,000. After another 4 years, so 7.5 years from grant total, you will have paid $17,616. And then lastly, as of 11.5 years total from the date of grant, you will have paid $20,696. You can, of course, abandon your patent at any point in this process. So if you get 10 years after grant and you decide you don't want the last 10 years, patents will have a 20-year life after grant if you pay for everything. But if you get 10 years out and it's not giving you value, then you can abandon the application and at that point save about $3,000. What's interesting about this is if you look at Blue Iron IP's estimate, they'll come out to about $56,000. One of the main reasons for this difference is estimates like that are including things like patent searches, which are optional, and there are strategic advantages and disadvantages to doing them, PCT and international filings, which allow you to file outside of the US, which, to be frank, most smaller companies don't choose to do that, and appeals, which the vast majority of the time, there are no appeals. So it puts patentees in a pretty difficult spot here trying to estimate their costs, because if you just look at the initial drafting costs that an attorney might quote you, you'd get a very low number, something a little below this 10,800 number, because this also includes filing costs. Versus if you look at the entire life of the patent online, you might get a number like $56,000, but that's including appeal costs and filing internationally and doing a giant patent search and all sorts of things that if you're a smaller company, you're not likely to do. Now, let's head back up and do a higher estimate. Let's say that we have a very complicated patent application. This thing's going to, be a 70, 80-page behemoth. And on top of that, we are a large entity, so we're not getting any cost savings from the USPTO. We have more than 500 employees. At that point, and let's also say that we have a lot of back and forth with the patent office. Instead of getting that average 1.37 office action responses per application, it's going to take us 3. And on top of that, we're going to file a provisional application first. So we'll file the provisional, we'll wait a year, we'll file the non-provisional. It's complicated, we're a large entity. Then after that, once we start working with the patent office, we go back and forth 3 times, which is more than the average. And on top of that, we are going to file track 1. So this whole thing is going to take place over the course of about 5 months. With that, our total cost comes out to $53,600. This shows you that the cost can vary hugely depending on the size of your entity, how complicated the invention is, whether you're filing track 1, and a host of other factors. So what I recommend you to do is if you want to know how much it's going to cost you to get a patent, or at least a rough estimate of that number, I would go to INRIpatentlaw.com, I would click on the patent cost calculator, it's over here in the top right, and I would enter this for yourself. As long as you read along with the descriptions, it'll take you a little bit because there's a lot of words to explain all of this, but it's really not that difficult to do. So, patents are expensive, but are they worth it? Well, most patent transactions aren't public, so data can be hard to come by. But there have been a few studies that have attempted to estimate average patent values. The 2012 Patent Value Quotient by IP Offerings determined that the average price per patent was about $367,000, and the median price was about $211,000 per patent. In 2016, an article by ADLI claimed that the average price paid per patent was about $360,000, and the median price paid was about $225,000. A Bloomberg article from 2020 found that the average price per issued patent was $388,000, and the median price was $266,000. Lastly, a Duke study from 2023 found that the average value of a patent was a whopping $13.5 million, and the median value was $3.8 million. However, that study pulled its patent value data from a 2017 study by the Quarterly Journal of Economics, which valued patents in a rather unique way, by combining patent data with the stock market response to news about patents. I'm more inclined to defer to the more standard valuations, with medians ranging from $211,000 to $266,000, and means ranging from $360,000 to $388,000. But I wanted to include the Quarterly Journal of Economics valuation as well for the sake of completeness. Aside from direct pricing data, a study by researchers at NYU and Harvard determined that ownership of at least one patent increased the odds of receiving venture funding by 59%. As for just filing a patent application, not even necessarily having had the application be granted, a 2023 study from the European Patent Office found that early-stage startups that had filed at least one patent application were 6.4 times more likely to receive venture funding than those that had not. All these studies are linked in the description below. So, are patents worth it? The data shows that they are, assuming your company can afford them. Think of it this way. If you're a small tech company trying to sell your business to a larger company, they can probably hire talent similar to yours, buy equipment similar to yours, and use a massive marketing budget to gain name recognition similar to yours. The one thing they can't do is if you own a patent, they can't legally use your technology without paying you. On the flip side, if you're a large company, intellectual property rights like patents and other intangible assets make up about 90% of the Fortune 500's value. The next step I recommend is watching the other 3 videos in the Patent Bootcamp series, linked in the description below. And if you want my help getting a patent, please go to INRIpatentlaw.com/contact. My name's Brad Henkelman with INRI Patent Law. I'm a licensed patent attorney with experience representing everything from Fortune 500 corporations to brand new startups. If this video is helpful to you, don't forget to subscribe and to hit the bell icon so that you're notified when we post new videos.